Thank you for joining us today. I'm Pastor Bob Vestmeyer, and I am privileged to serve as a chaplain with the Phoenix Police Department. We're so glad that you are with us as we celebrate National Faith and Blue Weekend that highlights the connection, support, and partnership between the faith community and our public safety professionals. I am so honored to share how chaplains serve those who protect us each and every day. I am also privileged to be joined by chaplains from multiple agencies serving in this great calling. Joining me today are several faith leaders who represent multiple public safety agencies. Obviously, the most important question we want to start with is, what is a chaplain? But before we answer that, I'd like these two gentlemen to introduce themselves and the agencies that they serve. Sir?
Thanks, Bob. I'm Vince Piano. I'm the chaplain director for the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office.
Perfect.
Father Arthur Nave. I am the lead chaplain for the Arizona Department of Public Safety.
Perfect. So in your interaction with those you serve within your agencies, we're going to start with you, Chaplain Piano. What is it that you do as a chaplain for the MCSO?
Well, the easy definition for a chaplain is I'm going to meet somebody right where they're at. Whatever situation they're perceiving, I'm going to be present with them and what they're going through. But specifically for the Sheriff's Office, we're the third largest county in the United States, so there's a lot of area to cover, but that includes all the jails. So we have detention officers, we have deputies, we have the command staff, we have 911 operators, we have all the other employees that are critically needed for the operations of the Sheriff's Office. So it's a little city. I mean, we have our own cafeteria that has to provide thousands of meals every day, and so it's pretty complex.
Absolutely. And so I address this from a state perspective, serving the Arizona Department of Public Safety, a state agency. Tell me what a chaplain does for the state.
Sure. So we have three main focuses as chaplains: is providing emotional and spiritual support, first and foremost to our troopers, their families, and the professional staff of the department and their families. So anyone that works for the department throughout the state of Arizona, we provide care for. And then secondarily, we provide support to the rest of the state agencies and the local agencies. And so when a small department doesn't have a chaplain or has a crisis, we can bring our 16 chaplains to bear if needed, plus our EAP program to assist them. And then on the third level, we assist the people of the state. So when we have a fatality or a critical crash, we can provide scene support and then also family support when we have to do a notification of someone passing. We are there to support our troopers and assist them, so that way they're not carrying that whole burden of the emotional, spiritual, plus having to tell them what happened. And so we help our department in that way.
Absolutely. And within the Phoenix Police Department, we serve our officers, we serve our non-sworn, and then we also serve their family members. Chaplain Piano, I wonder if you might share just a little bit of what that looks like when you serve as a chaplain to not just your sworn, but also the rest of your community.
Really, we're there for any request from any employee, and that includes to relieve the stress of their life by responding to any family needs. That includes extended family. That includes finding resources for sons, daughters, in-laws, brothers, sisters, because we want to relieve some of that stress because their job is very stressful and they're dealing with life like everybody else. So providing support in that aspect, and it can include a heartfelt call that they go out to, and they've called and said, hey, can you get some resources for this member of the community? Recognizing for them, it's part of their family. They work in that area constantly and they know them. So on some of those requests, we do respond to them and get outside resources or pull resources together to kind of bridge that gap for them. But really the main focus is knowing that this is a stressful job, knowing they're experiencing and exposed to trauma on a repetitive basis, which has been proven to be unhealthy. So we want to have some wellness focus, proactive. Definitely we have reactive, but proactive for them. So it's all them aspects. What they ask for, I'm going to run down and help get what they need.
Absolutely. Father Neve, we talked a little bit about what it is to serve within the course of kind of the line of duty. But how is it that you and your chaplains serve in terms of the presence that you have alongside those who are serving on our highways?
Yes, so the presence is a key part and foundation of our ministry, because if we aren't with our troopers, they don't know us. And being present to them, they get to know us, they get to see us. And as we respond to incidents with them and ride with them, which is a key part of our program, they get to learn who we are, and we build that trust. And it's through that trust that the troopers begin to open up to us, and we are able to help them more because they know us. And when they do have a bad day, they're like, I know who to call. Call Father, or call Sandy, or call me a chaplain, because they're going to be able to help me the most. And so presence is a key and I'd say unrecognized importance to our ministry, is to be present to them, because if they don't trust you, they're not going to call you.
Absolutely key point. And for us as chaplains, that presence goes beyond the street. It's walking through precincts. It can be walking through jails. It can be walking through a scene, to just be a physical presence of encouragement and guidance. If you wouldn't mind, explain some of the things that you might do for those who don't serve with a badge on their chest.
For sure. If I can, I'd like to add on presence. You described a geographical thing about presence, but when somebody is in front of me or in front of us, you have to be present with what they're feeling. You have to be present spiritually with what's going on there. So presence also, when you are around them, is you have to connect with them, because my agenda is not to have them think like me. My agenda is to let them know, what are you experiencing? How can I help you? How can I guide you through this, so that trauma and stress could be released and they can function in a proper way. But in answer to your question, as far as some of the other areas, I mean, even being in the jails and the stress of that, especially with this, we might as well say it, not being a popular vocation or job or profession right now, that we're understaffed. They're having to work days on their end days, so you have this stress. So a lot of times we'll come in there because of the physical things that happen to your body when you don't do some self-care. And in those conversations, you can hear them talk about caring for the people and individuals that are incarcerated, knowing that they have needs, and there are chaplains that provide to them, but sometimes they'll ask me, hey, this person's relative just died, can you go and talk to them? Well, that's not my role, but if it's important to you, I'm going to go do that. And so it creates an environment in that jail, which if you ever walk into a jail, it's oppressing. You feel a pressure. They may acclimate to it, but it doesn't take that fact away. But it's going to be on both sides of the bars. They're going to experience that. So in some of those times, they'll ask, hey, will you do that? Or a deputy asking, I was just at this person's house. They tried to commit suicide, man. I really feel for them. Can you go by there? I'm like, you got it. So it's fulfilling what their need is and helping them walk through it. And it's a community thing. I mean, for them, it's a community thing.
Absolutely. And I think one of the greatest privileges we have as chaplains, and I think you both would agree, is that we not only serve our officers, those who wear a badge, we serve those in communications, those that work in our crime scene, or those that are working in the various aspects. In fact, the very people who are helping to put this video together today, those are part of our family as well. And we serve all of them in terms of their spiritual needs, or at the very least, and just being an encouragement to them, to remind them that everybody within this massive family of blue that we have has a role to play. And if you're on the street, or maybe you're in an office, or in this case behind a camera, all of those people come together to make this happen. Describe that just a little bit, if you would, from the DPS side.
Sure, from the DPS side, it's being present and responding to their human needs, walking with them, as a state agency and as all our departments, we have people from all faiths, all colors, and all creeds. And as a chaplain, it's an honor and privilege that even though I'm a Catholic priest, I can still walk with them because they're my brother or sister, and listen to their story and to learn from their traditions and to give them that human dignity and say, I might not have the same belief, but how can I help you fulfill your belief? And that journey is so meaningful because many times when we get called for our employees, it's not on their best day. It's a loved one died overnight at the home. Can you come be present to them? Or something tragic just happened and we now have a situation that we need some support because we don't know what to do. And we just walk into that in faith as a brother or sister with specialized training. All of us go through high amount of training in our own denominations, but more importantly, as another person with empathy and not saying I have the answer, but let's walk together and figure it out.
Absolutely. And each of you have talked about the way that we can come alongside people in some of their darkest times, but we also come alongside people in some of their best times. We have the privileges to be a part of weddings as well as funerals. We have the opportunity to be alongside for baby dedications and baptisms. And a lot of times for our those that serve on those third shift and second shift or those strange off days that they don't necessarily have the opportunity to be a churchgoer because they're working when their church is meeting, which means we have the opportunity and the privilege to come alongside them as, if you will, a pastor or a priest or a rabbi, a faith leader for them, not to take the place of their faith leader, but to be that person who walks alongside of them until their schedule changes and they can get back into that role. Tell me some of the positive things that you've had the chance to do in terms of those wonderful moments of celebration.
Definitely be there for birth of their first child, to talk with them about their dream of getting married in 6 months and how does it look like and what does it look like. Those are big intimate moments in somebody's life that they're going to walk and share with you. So there's a trust. There's a vulnerability that happens. And I'll be honest, isn't that really the meaning of life? We're all here together, and that is beyond specific denominational beliefs, because I think all denominations are based upon community and fellow man. So you do get welcomed into that, which is, I'll be honest, as a chaplain, it's kind of puzzling. But it's something spiritual and beyond that when you go through crying and laughing and dreaming with people, man, you want to advocate for them. You want to be there for them. And so it does form that familial type bond, but I think that's what we're created for, in my belief. That's what we're created for.
Absolutely.
I think also it's in their moments in their career where they've done well and they're being recognized, whether it's a promotion or a retirement. How many of our guys are able actually to serve 25 years and retire, and to be able to have that transition in a good way and not just hang it up and where's my department, but to be able to celebrate with them and guide them and continue that journey even afterwards. It's huge to say congratulations on your promotion or retirement, or even welcome to the department, welcome to our family. When they graduate the academy, I mean, how much do they have to go through just to get into our profession, into this profession as an officer or even as a professional staff? It's a process and it's very difficult, but yet when they make that, to make them feel that we're welcome as part of the family, it begins where that's where it begins in our relationship and growth with them.
So one of the most positive parts that we have is the privilege to walk alongside people from cradle to grave, from their accomplishments through their disappointing parts in life. But we get to walk alongside them, not because they're weak or something is wrong with them, but to be an encouragement, a presence that affirms everything that is good about them. And the greatest privilege that the three of us could have in this moment is the opportunity to walk with somebody to make their life a little easier. And what I'm hearing you say is to make that a place of comfort and encouragement and affirmation. Tremendous answers from each of you. Thank you. I appreciate that so much. And I hope everyone got the opportunity to kind of hear some of the depth of what it means to be a chaplain. In the Phoenix Police Department, chaplains serve as part of an exceptional team of people. They are called the Employee Assistance Unit. Please take a moment to hear from them the unique role that they provide and we share a part in.
The Phoenix Police Department's chaplaincy program is an essential part of the department's Employee Assistance Unit. The unit maintains a wellness system for all employees and their families. In addition to the chaplaincy program, the unit provides peer support, counseling resources, and tools to help meet a wide range of individual needs. Our chaplains volunteer their time to support our efforts and are a key part of our success. From being on call to simply listening or providing spiritual care, they show up at all hours of the day to assist employees and their families. On behalf of the men and women of the Phoenix Police Department's Employee Assistance Unit, I want to thank all of you for your loving and never-ending service during this National Faith in Blue Weekend.
It is my privilege to introduce two new chaplains to you, and I'd like them to introduce themselves and the agency that they serve.
I'm Sandy Voris, and I serve the Arizona Department of Public Safety.
And my name is John Taylor. I'm a volunteer chaplain with Phoenix Police.
Exceptional. So one of the privileges that we had is we talked about what it is a chaplain does. Now I'd like to shift gears for just a moment and talk about why it is that you chose to do this, the agency that you serve, especially in light of the fact that we're all volunteers, meaning that we have the privilege of giving away our time, our expertise, and our talents to those whom we love and those that we serve. Sandy, I'd like to start with you if you don't mind. And before you tell us why you became a chaplain, you have a very interesting part of your story on how you got connected to the law enforcement community in the first place.
I originally became connected to the law enforcement community through being a bagpiper. So I served Glendale Police Department, and then I served the Department of Public Safety, and God opened a bunch of different doors, and here I am as a chaplain.
Outstanding. So why did you choose to serve the Arizona Department of Public Safety?
I met some of the people there, and they were just amazing people, troopers, as well as some of the staff, and I just truly, really enjoyed meeting them, getting to know them a little bit, and that's how it started.
So it got you involved, and you went through a background check, as we all did. And I think that's something that maybe people don't understand, is that for us as chaplains, we go through the same background check, including a polygraph, just like our officers and our sworn troopers do for Arizona Department of Public Safety. Along with getting into becoming a chaplain, what is it that's most satisfying to you about being a chaplain?
It just feels like I'm helping these people who are working so hard and are being so honorable and so courteous and professional when they do their jobs. And it feels like I'm developing relationships there and helping in a supportive role for all the things that they have to do and deal with every single day.
And we kind of talked in our previous segment on all the things that chaplains do for both our sworn and our non-sworn. Pastor Taylor, tell us why you became a chaplain with the Phoenix Police Department.
Well, I ended up as a chaplain because you asked me to, and I didn't think I could say no to you. So no, that's not really, but you did ask, and you did approach me in that way. And I thought, you know, this is a great way to serve. I have such a great respect for those in law enforcement, for those in military uniform, and just so appreciate what they do, how they serve. And so when you approached me and asked me about this, I thought, you know, this is a way kind of for me to serve them. They've been serving us in these different roles for so many years, and I want to give back in that way as well. And so that's why I decided to go through the process and to become a chaplain for the Phoenix Police Department.
Well, thank you for doing that. We appreciate you, a valued part for both of your agencies, knowing both of you, and what you provide for those that you serve. We talked about serving the sworn and the non-sworn. My next question, I think, as you think about becoming a chaplain and what you do each day is, tell me some of the significant ways that you feel like you make an impact for those that you serve.
Listening, just listening and talking with them, finding out what they do in their downtime and hoping that they have activities that they like and enjoy that are separate from law enforcement. Just hanging around with them, I guess.
You become that encouragement, that listening ear that they need. And I would take that just a step further, because one of the privileges chaplains have is we have something called confidentiality, meaning that when someone speaks to us, it stays with us. And one of the most important things in our integrity is keeping those conversations to ourselves, meaning that our sworn and our non-sworn have a safe place to share the concerns that they have. John, tell me about some of the significant parts of being a chaplain.
Yeah, it really is just being present, just being available and present to these officers, whether it's in a briefing, doing a ride-along, on a scene of a critical incident, whatever it might be, just being there, being present, being that listening ear, as Sandy mentioned, and just being that safe place that they can come to, somebody to talk to, somebody that they can confide in. When they're in a difficult situation, maybe it's a personal issue, maybe it's something else, but we just become that safe place for them to really be able to confide, someone to talk to, somebody just to know that, okay, what I say to you stays with you, and that's a good thing, and that really lets them be comfortable and lets them really engage with us, and as Sandy also said, develop that relationship with them.
So being volunteers, that means we made a choice. And I think for all of us, I can speak and say that we just love police officers and their families. We have a heart for what they do, but by being a chaplain, one of the things is we get to see them in ways that other people don't. Riding in a patrol car, walking through a precinct, being with them on a critical incident, walking into a scene, we see a part of them that the public doesn't get to see. So, Sandy, as you think about this, what is it about those you serve that makes them stand out, that makes them exceptional from your vantage point as a chaplain?
They're very, very, very professional, very courteous, very kind and compassionate, even in the face of sometimes anger coming back at them from civilians. Yeah. They're just amazing people. They always seem to keep their cool, if that's a way I can put it.
Which is pretty amazing considering what you witness riding along with them on the street. Absolutely.
Exactly.
John?
Yeah, I would agree with that. The level of professionalism that these officers have to provide every situation, every day, every call, not knowing exactly what they're going to face or see or experience when they get there. It's just incredible to see the variety of things that they have to deal with on a regular basis, and how they do it with such professionalism, with true care for the person, with what they're dealing with the situation. And it's just remarkable to see what it takes from them to be able to perform those different levels of service to the public. Again, not even knowing necessarily what they're going to be walking into or seeing or facing.
Absolutely, and I think it's interesting from us and from our point of view in that sometimes the narrative that we see portrayed either in social media or the media itself doesn't seem to reflect what we know about these people all the time. We tend to see them in their day-to-day actions and their thousands of encounters with people, and we see them doing such an incredible job, but then we see things that it represents such a small fraction of things that don't look the way that it's supposed to. Tell me a little bit about how you encourage officers when they feel like they're not represented the way that you and I might see them.
Basically, I would just encourage them that people, the vast majority of people in America appreciate what they do and love them and are very, very appreciative of what they do. And that if I represent that bit of that population, that greater number of people that care about them and care that they are doing an excellent, excellent job, and that it's really a very small minority that is on the other side of things.
Good point.
Yeah, the majority of the time, these officers are seeing people at their worst, and they have to be at their best to even in dealing with those kinds of situations. And it's just incredible to me the opportunity that we have as chaplains to encourage them to say, I know that was a very hard or difficult situation, but you handled that really, really well. The way that you interacted, with the way that you took care of this or that, just to encourage them and to let them know you're doing a great job And the vast majority of people out here really do appreciate and support the work that you're doing.
Which is interesting to me as a chaplain, because law enforcement, they don't do what they do because they want to earn some kind of accolade. They do what they do because they care deeply, they're professionals, they want to do something that makes a difference in their lives. But in law enforcement, I think we'd all agree that they're really not good at complimenting one another. And then you have those that only see the most difficult times, and so they're not getting it there. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I see you guys as being a walking reminder of all the good that they are and the opportunity to reflect all the good that is in them. So we know why you became a chaplain in this. Would you mind sharing what the greatest part of being a chaplain is?
I really think it's just the relationships that I'm developing. The troopers seem very open to having me hang around with them and do ride-alongs, and they're very open to having new people in their lives who come alongside and support them. And I've found that to be very refreshing, actually, that they're, yeah.
One of the most rewarding things to me is developing those relationships that you do get to communicate to them the value of what they're doing. And that level of encouragement that we just talked about, just the reminder that what you do matters. And just trying to, I would say, hold them up in a way that lets them continue to do what they're doing, just to encourage them in that way, just to provide some kind of measure of, again, the reminder of what you're doing really, really matters in this world. And it's very important work that you're doing. And to just encourage them to not give up in the good that they're doing.
So not only as chaplains, but as pastors that serve in faith communities, we have a faith that holds officers in a place of esteem. I think we share the idea that there is an authority that we believe that comes from their good in dealing with the bad that they see. As we walk with them through that, affirm them in the goodness and reflect that back to them, I also see us as an opportunity to always be a reminder and an encouragement to the good that they're trying to do each day. When we're surrounded with the darkness all the time, it can easily become a time where we don't feel like what we do makes a difference. We're going to address more of that in some of our coming sessions, but I'd like to thank both of you for sharing the personal side of why we're a chaplain in the first place. Thank you. Let's take a moment for another brief message.
I would like to take a moment to share what our chaplain team means to us. It's something I don't often get a chance to do. There have been countless times you have stepped in during moments of darkness when most people would not begin to understand what to do. Your commitment to service is more than anyone could ask for or repay. Your kindness and sacrifices have not gone unnoticed. On behalf of the men and women of the Phoenix Police Department, I want to say thank you for everything you've done to support our family. We love and appreciate you.
As chaplains, our agencies put an incredible amount of trust in us and allow us to move freely throughout the departments that we serve. In doing so, we get a very up-close and personal front seat, if you will, to their lives, both as part of their profession, but also their personal lives as well. Now, Chaplain Piano, you have a special role in this because before you became a chaplain with MCSO, you retired from the Phoenix Police Department. Could you talk a little bit about how those two go together?
Oh yeah, I can. That strikes a note because I had no intention of being a chaplain, and a perspective sometimes that officers can get is I just want to retire and leave. So the last thing in my mind was, okay, go back and hang out in that community of not the officers specifically, but the community of trauma, perception, and judgment that comes down on you in that role. But again, being a man of faith, praying about it, was like, you know what? My heart wants to go there. And it's going to be a different way of walking into that. So the perspective there is having knowledge to know that just like chaplaincy, if you look at culture, this is a culture. I mean, we have certain things. And so it's not a bad thing. And there is a police culture. There's good characteristics to that. But there can be some dark characteristics or deceiving things that occur in that role. So it's being able to recognize and encourage them to the fact of the good characteristics of it. And know that their identity, from my faith perspective, is greater than the shirt that's on their back. This is a calling, a noble calling that you really have to have a character or a wiring to do it in a healthy way, because the stress that's put on you, in my opinion, you've hit a chord. It should be OSHA regulated. I mean, it's a known fact that this profession and also fire profession is a trauma exposure profession that has evidence based that shows you will get diseases from this if you don't take care of it. It will destroy relationships that are near and dear to you if you don't take care of it. So walking in that, to shine light onto it, to say, hey, this isn't going to overcome you. We can walk through that. And to let that offshoot is a critical role. So, I mean, I'll jump out on saying reform, bring it on. Like, I've been on a department since 1983. You don't think we've changed since 1983? This is a science. Policing is a science. And we continue to step into it and change societally with it, because that's what we're supposed to do. We are the community's representative. So it is changing. But I say this, in the component of that, wellness for the officer. Be aware of what they're going through, and you can't put this expectation of this hero that's going to be silent, and I want you to stand tall while you're in front of me, but I don't want you to walk away and cry because you saw that child get hurt. That's the same age as your child, by the way. And I don't want to bring this home to my family and bring them down about what I see.
Absolutely.
So being there to generate those conversations, I mean, like I said, you struck a nerve, but I look at for the good of it. That we now are in a position to call it out. These roles that are there is a component whenever you change any direction with law enforcement, wellness, and using the evidence base that we know about the damage that trauma causes. I mean, permanently, like statistically, divorce, alcoholism, addictions, heart attacks, cancer. I mean, these are proven facts. And we got to be on top of that for them. I mean, you just have to. You can't send them out there and just say, okay, now you're there, now I'm going to judge every movement you make. It's like you got to be there for them and their physical and mental wellness so they can make good decisions.
So you talked about the accountability, but also the support that they need, which is a powerful balance that we need to have. And you walked us right in to a question that I think may be different in the minds of our audience compared to the way that we view it. Often when we think about the threat to a police officer or to somebody in law enforcement, our mind automatically goes to bullets and cars. But the greatest threat to police officers is neither one of those. As chaplains, we know that it's something a little bit deeper than that. And John, if you don't mind, outline a little bit for us what the greatest threats are, not just to our officers, but their families and also those who serve in a non-sworn capacity.
Yeah, it's an incredibly stressful job and environment for the sworn officers as well as those that are non-sworn. And so with what they have to deal with what they see, what they experience, again, the whole gamut of experiences or encounters that they have, it really does impact them. As was just mentioned, they're more than the uniform. They're people. And as a person, they have to deal with these different things that they see and they experience. And everybody deals with things differently. They carry things differently. Some things affect or impact them differently. And so it's really just a matter of trying to have that relationship so that you can discover, how are they dealing with this? How are they handling this? And how can I best serve them in this way? Because it is that trauma that they've seen, that they've experienced. It is the heaviness of the situation, whatever it might have been. It is, even the thinking, did I do this well or properly? It's just all of this is on them as they experience these different situations, and it can be very, very difficult to know how to process that, to know what to do with that. And I think that's some of the real damage is just the stress that is caused. That certainly impacts their families. It's not just a switch that you can turn off when you walk in the front door when you get home. It stays with them. And so just helping them process, helping them walk through, and being able to really handle that in a healthy way, rather than having it impact other areas of their lives.
Perfect. And I'm going to come back again and ask you to kind of expand on that a little bit. But I think for the help of our audience is every time we see a news story, we see a child that drowns, every time that we see an accident, every time that we see a shooting, every time that we see a domestic violence story in the news, we think about the victims that are involved, but oftentimes we don't think about how our officers are responding and being the hands-on presence in the midst of some of those violent actions. And to take it one step further, I think sometimes we don't even think about those who are taking that initial call. Communications, a 911 dispatcher, we just dial this magic number and suddenly police arrive. But there's a person on the other end who's being screamed information at in the worst moment of this person's life. They're trying to get information because they're trying to get it in an orderly way so they can get people there as quickly as possible, but they're getting pushback from the person who they're trying to help. The operator, then it moves over to a dispatcher, and a dispatcher is interacting with our officers moment by moment, often with what we call open mic, meaning they're actually hearing the screams or the cries. So there is an effect on those responding, there is an effect on those who take the call, and there is an effect on those who are the ones who are dispatching those that are there to help. Expand just a little bit, if you would, Chaplain Piano, on the threats that take place, not just to those that we serve as chaplain, but maybe you could take it even a little further into what does it do to them at the level of what we would call the soul.
Okay, so you have a perspective in living in a world or put into a situation repetitively. I mean, I'm not getting too psychological, but it wires a pattern in your thinking, a pattern possibly in your thinking that this is the greater percentage of what happens in the world, versus if you don't have a voice of hope in there to say, no, that's just, you're in a small sect and let's broaden your vision of that out. I mean, so take that perception, because it occurs and it is documented in the psychological world, to the employee that has to view all the child crimes videos, to compile it together, to put an evidence packet, to go to court, to the detective, like all the aspects of that on a repetitive basis, exposure. You have to have an outlet for that. And you talk about a cultures, that's the healthy thing, is they can talk to one another, and people might talk about having a sense of humor to diffuse that. That's okay, but it's also it's good to have a perspective to say, that makes me feel sad. I don't like that. And you can be in a role, I can be in a role now that, yeah, I can speak freely. I don't have to, I'm not going to encourage some persona of being strong. Being strong indicates you're not going to show emotion, because I can stare at you. And we talked about being present in the moment, and I can see when somebody's talking about it, I can see their facial expressions of how it hurts. And that's for everybody that has to handle that. Absolutely. And you have to ask them the question, how does that make you feel? And it can heal, it can offshoot all that, so it's not caught up in there. I think that's a big part of the role. And it's in every aspect of getting the call for something happening, the person taking it, the officer responding it, writing the report, turning the report over to somebody that's got to review it, so they repetitively are reading it. I mean, it has to go through the chain to the prosecutor, they're exposed all the way through to it, and it does cause trauma.
So you raise a great point for us as chaplains, which is we hear things, we see things because we're a safe place for those we serve to share. We don't want them to put up any filters for us, which means as chaplains we have to have some pretty thick skin. They may question everything that we believe in. They may say things that would offend most pastors in terms of the language they might use to express it. But that raw emotional moment is part, and you use the word healing, is part of their healing. So tell me a little bit about how you take the full brunt of allowing somebody to just dump that onto you.
Okay, I'll get there. It's like, my war is not against an individual. It's against principalities and powers. I believe there's something greater, and there's a meaning to life. So when somebody's in front of me, I'll take that burden because I don't have to carry it. I'm going to lay it at the feet of the one I believe in. He's going to take that burden. So I am the guy that you want to talk to. Because really, I don't even know why, I'll be honest, in some of these situations, why I'm in front of somebody, how I get there. Why are you telling me all this? Because it's very personal. But there's a moment that's happening there. And I believe it's greater than that moment. It's that connection. And it's a chance for them to get that out. And yeah, I receive it freely. I mean, that doesn't mean in some of the situations I'm at, I might know to step away but I'm present. I'm looking at them. I'm not trying to convince them. It's like, you got to calm down. This is this and that is that. Because there's more going on there to that individual. That's the role I think all of us agree to. As well as I have to know to do self-care. I have to know to call you and say, whew, tough week, and this is what it is. But this is our role, and that's something we learn. And we have to be very careful. Because first responder chaplaincy, I'll say this, because people will come and ask, hey, can I work at the sheriff's office? I have to protect them, number one, because if I send them in there and they get overwhelmed by that darkness and trauma, I'm damaging another individual. They're going to damage the individual they're from. So I look at it as a very respected role. I have to be careful because when I put this on, again, I represent the community, but I also represent them officers. So how I carry myself in front of somebody else comes a judgment, not only on me, but on everybody that wears this brown uniform. And by the way, we might as well make it the blue uniform too. And this, so we are in a role where, man, it's an honorable role to be received that way. And it's a humbling role to where I really will respect the person and what they're going through, because I don't know what that trauma has flashed. I don't know what's going on at home. They're in a drowning of a 5-year-old. They have a 5-year-old. Right. There's going to be some processing that has to occur with that.
So one of the things that maybe some of our audience is hearing for the first time is that chaplain provides that spiritual support, but also as chaplains, I think we have a very unique role in that we're a safe place to dump the very raw and personal part of who each of us is. And when our officers and their families are affected by some of the most gruesome and difficult scenes that you could imagine, or preferably you would try not to imagine, they need a safe place to be able to talk very openly and honestly in a place that they're not going to be condemned or judged for it. And as chaplains, that's one of our major roles. Chaplain Taylor, if you wouldn't mind expanding from your perspective, tell us some of the threats that you encounter with the Phoenix Police Department that go above and beyond what maybe our audience is familiar with.
I think it is just what we were talking about in the way of there's life happening for that officer as well. let alone the traumatic situation or the scene, whatever they're dealing with at that time. There's also their issues of life and what's going on in their personal life. And that can play into, whatever the situation might be as well, in that how they're processing it maybe, or what has helped shape their experience with this scene or with this traumatic incident, whatever it might be that they're dealing with. So it is dealing with that psyche in a way, and we're not psychologists or counselors in that way, but it is really just trying to figure out what's going on in your life right now. How are you handling this? It is developing that relationship. It is being present with them, having that I'm here for you. I'm here to listen to you. You can dump whatever you need to on me, because as was said earlier, it's not about me. It's about, I want to take whatever I can off of you to help you process this, to help you experience whatever healing needs to take place so that you can be as healthy as you possibly can.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that sometimes we want to offer as just kind of information to those who don't understand the law enforcement world the way that we have the privilege of understanding it is that empathy is the ability to feel what other people feel. And we see every day our officers showing that empathy to people, but doing it in a way where they have to keep a professional attitude all the time. Meaning that they can be completely disgusted and just revolted by the actions of somebody against an innocent party, whether that's a child, whether that's a neighbor, and yet they continue to act in a professional manner. Or the senselessness of a tragedy, a texting and driving, a baby drowning because somebody didn't watch their young one. And yet that's the officer who just dove into a pool to pull this kid out and just took this little, 2-year-old and handed them over to fire, knowing that this child is lifeless and there's nothing going to change that. So the privilege that we've had hearing from the two of you is that we walk alongside them and give them a free space to say whatever they need to say in a non-judgmental way, but we're there to help guide them back to a place of health and wellness, which is the privilege that we had for two reasons. One is we're present, and the second is because we understand. And that's the privilege of being a chaplain. So we're going to move to a more positive note, because that was pretty heavy. So one of the greatest privileges we have is we get to see them do some incredible things. Things that most likely don't make the news, but we know how important that they are. So one of the privileges is to see the incredible ways that our officers interact with the public, the incredible ways that they interact with people in need, and the incredible way that they serve that maybe other people might not be that aware of. And Pastor John, if you don't mind, I'm just going to start with you. Go ahead.
Sure. It's everything from, they've seen some kids, riding their bikes or whatever, playing basketball on the street, and just stopping just to say hi to them, to interact with them, give them one of the sticky badges, or something like that. Maybe even just shoot baskets for a couple of minutes, just to let even kids know, wow, we're really good guys. We're human beings. We can have fun, all the rest of that, so that they have a different perception of them. As well as, I'm thinking of one incident in particular where we were called to a scene to deal with a person who was quite unruly, and in the checking on their ID and everything, decided that they needed some psychiatric care. And so we drove them down to where they could get that. And the whole way down there, just the things that were being said from the back seat, and just the invective, the language that was being used, it was just, and so when we arrived at the psychiatric care facility, the helpers there came out and they were ready to, all right, we're really going to have to deal with this. And the officer said, give me 2 minutes. And he opened up the back door and he spoke to this person and calmed them down in such a way that was just amazing. Amazing to see how they dealt with them as a human being. And that person willingly stepped out of the car, went into the care facility, and there wasn't any problem at all with that. And it was just amazing to me to see, wow, how they dealt with that situation, how they de-escalated it, and how they just, okay, now they're ready to be transferred in here. And it was just incredible. Just so neat to see.
Yeah, there's so many different details within the different departments, but they're all community-based. I mean, they get to know people in the neighborhood. They get to know things that may be a problem for the community as a whole, as an individual that they're struggling with. But like simple things that come to mind is knowing that in one small community that basketball was like where the community came together at. Well, no scoreboard, no, like very, not the best basketball court, if that's like your community. So getting together, making calls, hey, Chaplain, do you know somebody that could help? Let's get him a scoreboard. Let's champion around him like that. And so, I mean, those things happen all the time. I mean, it's a tough job where you like, I'm following the rules on this because this is a crime and certain, like I said, this is a science. It's not you just send somebody out there and like, come up with something on that one and figure it out. It's like, no, on certain crimes, you have to be regimented because you have to testify and you have to be consistent. Right. But there's still a beating heart in that individual. So at other times when they're out there, they're noticing what goes on and they'll ask, let's get together. Hey, they're having a group community thing at the church. Is there anybody that can come there? And they'll put that out and we'll show up there. Right. For what reason? I mean, other than they want us to have lunch with them or something like that. But yeah, they really want to have a relationship with you and sit down. And they want the same thing and they sit down with that. So I think we lose that aspect of just, maybe it's from watching all the cool shows or something. But there's the other aspect of this that I have to sit and talk to you more often than I have to run somebody down, or they have to, not me anymore, and handcuff them, or it's just, we lose that aspect of it when looking at some of the tragic events that happen, and then we can dissect it. But it is going to the community, knowing what's going on and calling and saying, hey, let's get them a better basketball court. I mean, those sorts of things.
Part of what I'm hearing the two of you say is the importance of the community engagement. And then there's the personal side that our officers have with people. I've watched officers be able to pull somebody over, and all of a sudden I see the officer sitting there kind of stopping and thinking. And he's not thinking of how many charges he can write on the ticket. He's thinking, if I load this person up with everything that's really wrong with this vehicle, I'm going to ruin them financially. So I'm just going to give them a warning. Now that's taking a risk. I've seen them get into races with kids, foot races. It's like, okay, we're picking a kid up who ran away from home. And the officer goes, I tell you what, if you're faster than me from here to there, I won't take you home. That's still a little bit of a risk, but in the fun, we're building relationships with people. I have watched the spouses of officers who have been gravely injured in the midst of something by somebody doing something wrong offer the forgiveness to that family, because the family is not what did this. It was one individual within the family. I've had officers who pray for the families of those that were forced to use force against, and they're concerned about them first. So when we talk about the threats against police officers, it's only right that we also talk about the good that they do that most often never makes it into the media. I think what we could all share with our audience is this, that for every one story that you see in the media of an officer doing something good, it only represents 100 to 200 stories that never get told. And we want you to know that our officers are not just professional, they have a heart, they have empathy, they care, and while they themselves take the threats within them right to their soul, they are the ones who show mercy and compassion and love, and that's our obligation to help support them to accomplish that which is the greatest goal within humanity. Welcome back. In every agency that is represented here today, we have people from every walk of life. People with different beliefs, different customs, different cultures, different creeds, and of course, different genders. The number one question that I often get from inside an agency as well as outside serving an agency is, how do we do that? How do we serve people that are different from us? And I'd like to begin by tossing that question to you, Chaplain Voris. How do you serve the people that are different from you, as well as you can see, different gender in terms of those you serve within DPS?
Thank you for asking. I like to ask questions. I'm a naturally curious person. I studied intercultural studies at seminary, and I'm very curious about other people's faith traditions and even just, food. Food is a good one. So I like to ask questions. I like to listen to what they say, and that's a good beginning point. And eventually we're going to discover some common ground. And also any offer that I make to pray. I've never had anybody refuse an offer of prayer, even if it's just for general safety and wisdom while they're on the job. So.
You bring up a great point. Within our agencies, I think we would agree that our officers are also very accepting of other people's cultures, values, and beliefs. And they may not share ours, but they always seem to show a professionalism and even a tolerance of our faith in their faith world. So let me ask you a more specific question, if you don't mind, which is, how do you serve somebody who might say to you, Chaplain, I appreciate it, but I don't believe at all. I don't believe in what you believe in.
I would just say, all right, that's fine, and maybe try to work my way around that with some other questions, and maybe later in the discussion to see what could open up there. It'd just be a sort of a different approach to it.
Absolutely. So let me point out the obvious. We got two guys up here and one gal. Obviously, we have female and male officers that are out there. Tell me how you interact with those that may identify the same way in terms of gender for you, or maybe they don't.
Well, a lot of the troopers I'm with are younger than my kids. So I have been told that I give off sort of a good mom vibe. So I kind of play on that. I try to be the good mom, the approachable, safe person that they can talk to, and that's male and female. And I've seen as much professionalism out of female officers as out of the male troopers. So there's a seamlessness there. They work well together, and there's no difference in terms of their professionalism. They're both.
I like that. You make me feel good about being older. That works out great. Chaplain Piano, what do you think?
Well, just as Chaplain Sander had said, that when you come to an individual, I'm having conversation with them, and the multicultural world that we live in with how you identify with your gender even. I don't know that that's even part of any of my topic or where I'm going with them anyways, other than being there with them, understanding what's going on with them, and specifically even being Christian. Within the Christian community, there's different beliefs. I have to be sensitive to each one. I'm not there to push my specific beliefs even to a Christian. I'm to listen to them. So when we enter into different denominations of atheists or any of that, I'm there to listen to them. But if specifically they are requesting a denomination that they want assistance with, we have mutual aid and resources that immediately, especially in this city and county, they're accessible, and they are more than willing in the community. Honestly, the community is great, the faith community, to come out and help and be there for them. So that's always available. And then just, I'm not there to replace the community that they're entrenched in, but to affirm, hey, so what is your belief? What do you? I mean, that's the greatest question of all, even to somebody that's an atheist, because they're going to believe in something and it's a conversation. So, but we do also make sure that we have a representative of who's on the department with different denominations and gender and those sorts of things.
I appreciate that from both of you, because there are things we simply don't know. As Sandy, you talked about asking questions. We ask questions because we're not familiar with every religion, every belief, every creed, every culture. So we ask questions to gain information in order to be the best support or encouragement that we can be with the list of resources that we might have within our community. Meaning, if I can't be that person that subject matter expert in your faith tradition or your culture. We're going to find somebody who is, in order to be a support and encouragement. That is the partnership that we have with our community, and in all fairness, that's exactly what this whole Faith in Blue is all about. It's a partnership with those in our community. It's a partnership with other faiths. It's a partnership with other faith leaders. And we do that even though we don't have that within ourselves. I would say that I think one of the things that I've seen in each of you, but also I have the privilege of doing, is I know there's one thing that all of us in humanity desire, and that is to be encouraged, to be affirmed, to be respected, to be admired, and to be cared for. And regardless of culture, belief, gender, faith values, I know that if you're wearing a uniform, you have already gone above and beyond to be the person that I know I can trust and respect and honor for who you are. One of the interesting things, and I'm sure it may be different, but it's got to be kind of close statistically, for every 100 people in the Phoenix Police Department that take the test to become a police officer, only 9 of them ever make it off probation to be a police officer. Meaning that the people who wear our uniforms, whether that's DPS or MCSO or the Phoenix Police Department, we know they have already gone through mass hurdles of integrity and character and judgment and education to get where they are. So one of the things I'm hearing from you guys is that we can be an encouragement, at the very least, to just admire them for who they are. Sandy, you talked about questions we can ask to learn. Vince, you talked about the importance of finding community resources, which is what this whole time together has been about. How do we have these community relationships with faith leaders, not just amongst ourselves, but with our entire community? We still have 2 important areas to cover before we complete our time together. As you've noticed, we've changed out one of our chaplains to give a kind of a broad response to this very important question. One of the most important things that we can do from our perspective is to share some encouragement with our community leaders and our faith leaders. So I'm going to ask each of our chaplains to share with you the importance of what they would like to say to you as a community leader or to you as a faith leader, and how you can be a part of the help, the support, the encouragement, and care of the wonderful people that we have the privilege to serve. Chaplain Voris, I'd like to start with you.
I know that our law enforcement officers know that the vast majority of our community supports them. And if you're a faith leader or a community leader, please continue to do that. Continue to show your support in whatever way you feel led to do so. Many people buy them coffee, they buy them meals, they just walk up to them and say thank you. If you are so led, please pray for them. Pray for them as they go about their jobs. Pray for wisdom and safety for them as they do their jobs. That would be the most important thing.
Well, let me ask you a second follow-up question to that, which is, because you ride with troopers and you're around them and the different people that we're asking our community and faith leaders to support, do you have perhaps a story, kind of an anecdote, where that kind of response from the community made all the difference in the world for one of those that you serve?
I do know that I've had troopers tell me they can't go anywhere without getting their meals paid for and their coffee bought. So I mean, they just pretty much, they say that most of the time someone is always feeding them. So they're very grateful for that and appreciative, and they understand the motivation behind it and they appreciate it.
So really, it's the little things done consistently over time that make the biggest impact, not necessarily some of the big things that people want to do, but it's just the kindness. Maybe even to add one more thing to that is just waving at officers or troopers when you see them go by. They're not used to that with all the fingers, so it's kind of an important way that we can show appreciation for them.
Yes, and people who line up when there's been an unfortunate line of duty death, and they do the lines of people that are waving flags and showing support as the motorcade goes by and things like that.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most moving parts, I think, for all of our law enforcement agencies. Father?
Well, I think for me, it's recognizing that they're part of our community, that as faith communities, we encompass many professions, and we call on those professions at different times to help us in our ministry. And I think the law enforcement community especially can be quite helpful because there is so much fear in our society. We can build bridges with them. And so I remember when I was growing up in Kingman, Arizona, that there was a reserve motorcycle officer, and he would come to church as soon as he got done with his shift. And he was in uniform. And it was a welcome sight to see someone and just have the extra level of protection, or that feeling and understanding to see someone in uniform in the parish. And I've had, as a pastor, officers come up to me and ask, hey, it's Ash Wednesday. Can I just swing by real quick? I'm like, yeah, this is when we're giving ashes, no problem. And they come in, get their ashes, and keep going, because that's all they can do. But making them feel welcome and to recognize that there are benefits to having them in our community, because they do have training. If something goes on in the middle of a service, they're going to be able to just step up and help you in a way that maybe an usher won't be able to, and maybe help diffuse something. And so they're very valuable members of our community, and we can partner with them more than alienate them. And so a couple suggestions is, if you're having your annual fairs, festivals, invite your PD, invite their community resources to be a part of that. Or if you're having a difficult time with something within the community, host a session with a police officer. I know at my last parish, we had a night where we brought a psychologist, the local captain from DPS, myself, and we talked about how to be safe and what to look for and how to help your children. And the parents loved it because we were human, we were personable. Now, the funny part of that is we were walking outside, I was giving the captain a tour of my church, and several of my teenagers thought I was being arrested. Fun times, and the captain was going, no, he's my friend, it's all good, he's okay. But those are opportunities where they can see the human, we can joke and be safe and grow those relationships. Because I think going forward, we do have to build those bridges. We have to be partners, because they are the first to come to our emergencies, and they're there lickety-split when we need them, and so to not alienate them.
That's so powerful. I think one of the things that often gets lost is there is no us and them. There's just us. Every police officer came out of a neighborhood, came out of a community, came out of a church, came out of a faith background or a cultural background that's represented within the broader community. There is no us and them. That's the part that seems to get lost. They were born in Maryvale and now they serve in Maryvale, or they served in a church in Scottsdale and now they're, serving in that police department, or maybe their state agency. But they are us. And what you're talking about, Father Nave, which is so important for all of us to remember, is we need to just treat them like they're us. And that's going to set them at ease, which is what you were talking about, Sandy, the importance of just doing the little things that matter most, which is treat them like we would anybody else. I'd like to add this final thought for community leaders and faith leaders, and that is something that I think every officer that I talk to wants to communicate to community and faith leaders, which is this. I've never met the officer, and I mean that with all my heart. I say that from the deepest part of my soul. I've never met the officer that does not desire to be excellent in everything that they do. They also understand they're people, meaning that they're not perfect. When we judge officers, which we have every right to hold officers accountability, we have to do that. And interestingly enough, they desire that accountability. But the standard by which we judge officers has to be on excellence and not perfection. Perfection is the foreknowledge that allows you to make every right decision so it works out perfect for everybody. From my faith tradition, only God has that. But what we do want to hold them accountable to is what they desire to live to, which is excellence, which means doing the very best they can with the training that they've received, with the resources present in the split second that they have to make a decision. They just want to be judged the same way that we judge each other and held to the same standards that each of us hold ourselves to. They hold themselves to a higher standard, but may we not hold them to a higher standard than they're capable of ever meeting.
And I would add, Bob, that when an officer or a trooper has to make a decision in that split second, they're going to need long-term support. And as chaplains, we are there in those immediate and that follow-up, but really it's their faith community and those faith leaders that can really help bridge and help them because they've built that relationship with them. And so I think it's also important for faith leaders, if they hear of something going on with one of their officers, to reach out to them, because when that faith community reaches out, it takes away the isolation. And it's not just a chaplain saying, oh, you're not isolated, we're here for you, but their faith community is also surrounding them. And so it's another opportunity that our leaders can really assist us as chaplains, who have a lot on our plate too, with our departments, reach and fulfill that faith need of that person in a very specific way, where we might not have the same denomination, but we're there to support them. That faith dimension comes in, that faith leader, and brings that deeper dimension and that deeper relationship, and helps that officer come back or return to a more normal ability of serving that much faster because of those faith leaders.
So the more support, the better. And that's what this has all been about from the very beginning, which is a partnership. The Faith in Blue initiative is all about a partnership between the faith community and our public safety partnerships. Thank you to both of you for your message of hope for those you serve, but also for our faith and community leaders as well. In our final segment together, we've rotated back two of our chaplains to address a very personal part of a message we'd like to share with those who are serving as our professionals within the law enforcement communities, but also their families. Each of us want to share a message to those who are out there serving, but most importantly, we want to make sure that message also gets to their family. So I'd like to ask each of you, what is the personal message you'd like to share with those that you serve, but also let's include their families during probably what is the most difficult time there is to serve in a profession like this one? And if it's okay, Chaplain Piano, I'd like to start with you, sir.
If you're looking for something deep, you should have had the other chaplain up here, but from my heart, what comes to mind is a lot of times the officers are referred to by Chaplain Fesmeyer, Piano, by their last name. They were given a name by their parents. They have an identity. They're called different names by their children, by their significant others, by brothers, by sisters, by friends. That's who they are. Be true to that, because don't get convinced that you'll be called a hero one day and then the next day you'll be called something else. And so I just want them to know to be true to themselves. I mean, they're greater. The calling they have is greater. And be open to share with their family. They don't have to share the raw details, but hey, today was a hard day for me. We don't have to come into any more of that. And for the families to be involved in those conversations and not necessarily probing the details, but I just come back to that. Like, you were somebody before you put the uniform on, and you're still that somebody, and hold strong to that. And then I think God created them to be just who they are, and they need to be that person in that uniform.
Outstanding. Thank you. Chaplain Taylor?
First of all, I would say thank you. Thank you for what you do to those officers, troopers, whatever they might be. Thank you for giving of yourself to serve in this way. It's an incredibly important work that you are doing, and we just are so grateful that they've taken on that calling and stepped into those roles to do that. To the families, I would also say thank you. Thank you for allowing your loved one to do the job that they're doing. because it does matter to the community, to the county, to the state, that your loved one is doing the job that they're doing. It really does matter. To those who are serving specifically, I would say a scripture that comes to mind. Don't grow weary, don't grow tired of doing this good thing, the right thing. And as often as you have the opportunity to do good, do it. And for those of us that have a faith background or a faith belief, that's what gives us hope. That's what allows us as chaplains to do what we do. But it also can make such a huge difference in their life. And so I would just encourage them that if they don't have a faith right now, that they would check that out, that they would see, because they need to have some hope in their lives. They do see a lot of the down, the dirty, the ugly, the whatever you want to call it, part of humanity. And it can just be incredibly helpful to have that hope in something greater than themselves, bigger than themselves, and that can come through a belief in that way. So that's what I would say.
Fantastic. Just in addition to what each of you has shared, also I would add my thanks to all of our public safety professionals. You're needed. We can't do this without you. You make a difference each and every day. To your families, as you've heard from each of these men, and you've also heard from the other chaplains we had involved today, your families are so important, not just to you, but to us as well. We want to remind you that you don't walk this journey alone, and you were never meant to walk this journey alone. Please utilize those of us who want to walk alongside you, because as you heard Chaplain Piano said, we can see who you are. We know who you are. We don't question who you are because we can see it for ourselves and we experience it every day. Sometimes we can be your biggest cheerleaders and your biggest affirmation, because everybody needs to be encouraged, supported, loved, and cared for. And it's important to be reminded just how special that you truly are. To each of the family members that hopefully get a chance to see this as well, please know that you too are part of all of our compassion and care. We want to make sure that you're taken care of as well. And if there's anything that we can do as chaplains in any of these agencies and the agencies that really we represent, we couldn't get everybody up here today, but there are chaplains serving in agencies all over our state. Utilize your chaplaincy. Utilize us to come alongside you, because we care and we need you to be the difference that you make each and every day. To my fellow chaplains, thank you so much for all that you do, for who you are and the calling you have accepted and give freely. I want to thank all of you for joining me today. I know that you're used to being in the background, but it was important to have this conversation to share with our community how our officers, our non-sworn, and their families are getting the support that they need. It was a blessing to share our work with all of you. We hope that you learned something new, not just about us, but most importantly about those we are so honored to serve, the incredible people serving our communities every day. If this program has inspired you to learn more about the chaplain programs represented during this conversation, you're welcome to capture the information on the screen. And thank you, and take care.